It was a beautiful morning in the middle of August. At this time of year, there is no drizzle in the east of England. The weather is absolutely gorgeous, with warm sunshine beckoning everyone to come out and enjoy it. So it was at Cambridge, one of Europe's major university hubs. At the back of Christ's College, there was a small marshy meadow. It was bathed in sunshine and teeming with small animals. A male common bombardier beetle, one of the most widespread ground beetles in Europe, was perched on a rock at the edge of the meadow. The little critter was busy looking for a mate, but had no idea who was going to cross his path today and completely ruin those plans. Before I tell you what happened to this poor beetle and why it became famous, I would like to ask you to subscribe to my channel. Creating educational videos like this takes a lot of time and effort, gathering real information from multiple sources, combining and creating compelling content. Your support by subscribing means the world to me and gives me the motivation to keep working. So please, come on, do it. And if you like the video at the end, be sure to like and comment on it. Now, let's start with the true story of the bombardier beetle. Bombardier beetles are most active during the summer months, but because their adult lifespan is quite short, they are dedicated to just one goal: the rapid transfer of their genes. Our male beetle was also fully focused on the most important task of his life. He began to send pheromones through the air, signaling that he was ready to mate. He was also in tune with his inner instincts, which directed him towards moisture. As female bombardier beetles prefer to lay their eggs in damp soil, he was most likely to find a mate on the banks of the River Cam, the main river running through Cambridge. He could have flown there, but generally bombardier beetles only use their wings to escape danger, so he preferred to walk all the way. By the time he reached the riverside, he had already detected the pheromones of other males in the air, also seeking females. But the beetles were not alone. Charles Robert Darwin, just 20 years old and studying theology at Cambridge, was also wandering around. Terribly bored with his Greek, Latin, and other classics, he had no desire to become a priest. His only joy was the outdoors, in the nature. He loved riding, taking long walks and hunting, but by far his favorite hobby was collecting beetles. He was inspired in this by his cousin William Darwin Fox, with whom he corresponded regularly about the species he found on his travels. But Charles Darwin was not the only entomology enthusiast at Cambridge at the time. He became embroiled in a rivalry with a not much older student, Charles Cardale Babington. They once had a serious and bitter argument over who would buy a large collection of beetle specimens from a local dealer, and often over who would be the first to discover a new species. Darwin dreamed of the latter all the time, including during this walk along the banks of the River Cam. Morning had turned to day and the sun was starting to beat down. Our young male and the other bombardier beetles that had not yet found a female ran to a brittle tree trunk to cool off and hide under the bark. Darwin, who was always in the mood for collecting beetles, also passed by. He knew that in hot weather many species like to crawl into the moist layer under the bark to feed on the rotting wood. He couldn't resist tearing off the old bark and stirring up the munching insect company. The beetles scattered in an instant, but Darwin managed to catch 2 of them. Our young male and another unfortunate fellow were flailing their 6 legs wildly, but could not escape the strong grip of the big fingers. At first Darwin couldn't figure out which species they belonged to, so he sat down on the ground and looked at them curiously for a while. Suddenly, from a crack in the bark, emerged the crucifix ground beetle, an extremely rare European beetle that only occurs in a few places in England. It was highly prized by beetle collectors in the 19th century, so Charles could not let it go. At the same time, he was not prepared to give up any of the beetles he had already caught, so he decided to do something very unwise. He took the young male in his mouth and gently grabbed it with his teeth, leaving his right hand free to grab the crucifix ground beetle. This was the last alarm for the frightened male. He had to react in his usual predator defense. The bombardier beetle is renowned for having the most formidable and effective defense in the insect world. Once its enemies have experienced the power of its chemical weapons, they will never come after it again. Even Charles Darwin remembered for all time the horrible feelings he experienced at that moment. The body of a less than half-inch long bombardier beetle contains special glands that produce a unique secretion. The beetle's abdomen then used a special mechanism to squirt this extremely poisonous, hot, and even caustic liquid through the anus and, in this case, into Charles Darwin's mouth.
Gosh, for Christ's sake!
Cried poor Charles, as the nasty substance burned his tongue and ran down his throat. In unspeakable disgust and pain, he spat out the first bombardier beetle, let the second slip from his hand, and of course, lost the crucifix ground beetle. He stood up and accidentally stepped on the saliva-soaked young male, crushing it completely. He staggered back to the university to seek medical attention. More than 15 years later, when he had earned a reputation as one of Britain's greatest naturalists, he wrote to his friend and fellow explorer, Leonard Jennings, about this unique experience. However, Charles was not seriously injured. Bombardier beetle secretions are caustic, but only cause pain, burns, or ulcers on the skin of larger mammals. On the other hand, this unbeatable defense can inflict serious damage on smaller predators, such as shrews, birds, frogs, and is usually devastating to invertebrate enemies, such as ants, spiders, or necklace ground beetles. In Darwin's case, sadly, it was the young male who took the worst of it. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end, and if you're interested in more details about the bombardier beetle's remarkable defense, which is undoubtedly the most unique and sophisticated chemical weapon in the animal kingdom, stay tuned to the channel, because there's a new video coming up in which I'll break down everything, from what the secretion of this deadly little beetle is actually made of, how it's produced, how the beetle's incredible excretion mechanism works. I will also reveal why exactly this defense has impressed the biggest engineering and weapons companies, and much more. Thanks and goodbye for now.